We begin with the turmoil on college campuses around the country. More protests amid the Israel-Hamas war. More arrests were made overnight at universities like Dartmouth and Fordham here in New York and in California. There are questions about the police response to the violent clashes there. Trevor Ault is there on the UCLA campus. Trevor, what's happening right now?
So, George, this is an extremely intense scene playing out. You see law enforcement right now. This is at the edge of the encampment. All this debris here is what those protesters had used to fortify the outside of it all day yesterday. At 6 o'clock, this was declared an unlawful gathering. You can see law enforcement. You heard they're firing flashbangs over the crowd. They've been methodically pulling it apart. We've seen some protesters who have been held in zip ties. Now, I spoke with some demonstrators yesterday, and they told me that they wouldn't fight back, but that was specifically against counter-demonstrators. Will that hold up against law enforcement? We have to wait and see. So far, we haven't seen a lot of physical resistance other than standing their ground. We've seen some of them very distressed, but screaming that they don't have weapons, but still not giving up their ground here. If anything, we've seen a few demonstrators who have been throwing bottles, tossing water, and you might actually at some points see some smoke that we believe is from fire extinguishers. But mainly, we're watching as these protesters standing their ground after what has been many, many days here on campus. A very intense situation that has escalated significantly just in the past 45 minutes or so, and this is probably one of the most intense clashes that we've seen as these campuses have been playing out all over the country.
Free, free Palestine, free!
Overnight, from coast to coast, tensions boiling over on college campuses as protests over Israel's war in Gaza grow more confrontational. A massive police presence moving in early this morning, beginning to break up encampments at UCLA. The LAPD declaring a citywide tactical alert as officers in riot gear responded to crowds. It comes just one night after that pro-Palestinian encampment came under attack by pro-Israel activists. The lack of police action that night since called into question. University police responding to the criticism, saying the campus leadership, not law enforcement, owns the results of their decisions. Classes at the school now canceled. In Oregon, at Portland State University, protesters barricading themselves inside the library since Monday. Despite the school telling them to leave immediately, food and bedding was seen being delivered. At the University of New Hampshire in Durham, pro-Palestinian protesters clashing with police in riot gear. While at Dartmouth College, police arresting 90 protesters after an order to leave an encampment. Violent clashes breaking out at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. 4 officers injured, dozens of pro-Palestinian protesters arrested. The dean of students escorted by police as he walked through the mall after encampments were taken down. Protesters taking to the streets of New York City. The NYPD arresting nearly 300 demonstrators across the city. Police clearing out an indoor encampment at Fordham University.
If you refuse to leave, you may be placed under arrest.
Officers ordering protesters to disperse immediately, arresting at least 15 people. Some Republicans now calling out President Biden to use the National Guard to dismantle encampments. Biden has yet to address the recent confrontations on campuses.
And this has really just picked up just in the past 30 seconds or so. Law enforcement's been pulling apart the left side here of the encampment, taking it apart. They asked us to step back a little bit. We're going to be tossing all of this over the edges of the barricades. It does look like in the distance, a lot of these demonstrators are actually starting to disperse. We've seen some of them with their hands up. Law enforcement, though, methodically making their way through here. There were hundreds of people who were inside this encampment. Now, how many of them are going to willfully give themselves up for arrest? This was considered an unlawful gathering. That's yet to be seen. We aren't seeing a lot of physical skirmishes. We haven't seen anyone personally who's resisting arrest. But you talk about these hundreds of police officers, hundreds of demonstrators. This is absolutely going to play out for quite some time through the morning. George?
And Trevor, remind everybody, that is not gunfire we are hearing, correct?
No. Flashbangs, it's being fired overhead. We've seen a few non-lethal rounds that have been fired at people. That's been few and far between. The noises that you're hearing isn't gunfire, though. It's meant to kind of distract and be a bit of a dispersal technique, George.
Okay, Trevor, thanks very much.